evening, everyone. I'm Ron Vaughn. Welcome to our WFMZ TV viewers, our WFMZ.com viewers, and to viewers across Pennsylvania on the PCN network. It's my privilege to spend an hour with the candidates in the 15th Congressional District. The district encompasses the Lehigh Valley, plus parts of Berks and Montgomery counties. Let me get right to introducing the candidates. The candidates tonight are, first of all, Democrat John Callahan. He is currently the mayor of Bethlehem, first elected to that office in 2003. And secondly, the incumbent congressman, who is Republican Charlie Dent. He is seeking a fourth term in office. And thirdly, the independent candidate tonight is Jake Towne, who has left his job as a chemical engineer to run for Congress. Welcome to all of you. And here's the plan. Our tried and true WFMZ debate format is a little different. It's less formal, less structured than you may have seen in debates. In fact, what we're really trying to achieve is a discussion. No timed answers or timed rebuttals, things of that kind. The four of us will simply talk about the issues as you might around your kitchen table. I'll pose questions and change the topic from time to time, if I can. And the candidates are encouraged to interact, as we all naturally do, in discussions. The only formal part of the hour will be at the end, when each man will get 1 minute for a closing statement. We have drawn straws before the broadcast to determine the order of those closing statements and to determine who gets my first question. So, here we go. New York Times today, the lead on a story says this is not what a recovery is supposed to look like. Less than a month before the November elections, the United States is mired in a grim new normal that could last for years. So you could call it a recovery or a recession, I guess. But if you don't have work, and 95,000 jobs were lost just last month, the new normal stinks. The Times article says that at the current rate of job creation, then the country would need 9 years to recapture the jobs lost in the recession. And the real unemployment rate, so-called, which counts 11 million people who have stopped looking for work or who are working part-time because they have to, that's about 17%, or nearly 1 in 5 people. So, could you tell our viewers, first of all, Mr. Callahan, viewers who are without jobs, what kind of hope that they have of finding work if you are elected to Congress?
Well, Rob, I think that is the central question in this campaign, is jobs and the economy, and what are we going to do to move our country forward? And I think what we need to ask ourselves is, how do we get here in the first place? Congressman Dent has supported the failed economic policies that got us here. While the stimulus bill has helped to some degree to grow jobs, the Congressional Budget Office indicates that we've had up to 3.3 million jobs as a result of the stimulus bill. It's not enough. 9.6% unemployment is unacceptable. And so we focused a lot in this campaign on jobs. It's why I've pointed out a 5-point jobs plan and to do some of the similar things that we've done in Bethlehem. In the last 6 years in Bethlehem, we have driven more than $2 billion of economic investments that has resulted in more than 5,000 new jobs in the city. And so I've got a record on jobs plan, but elections are about the future, Rob. They're not about the past, which is why we've talked so much about jobs. And my jobs plan, I'm just address 3 points of the jobs plan, and it's a 5-point plan. Is first, we're going to close the loopholes on large corporations that are outsourcing jobs every day to foreign countries. Secondly, we're going to take the proceeds of closing those loopholes and we're going to invest them back into small businesses. I think we all recognize that 2/3 of the jobs in this country have been and will be created by small businesses. So we're going to lower that 9.6% unemployment. We're going to do it by investing into small businesses. And the third point of the plan is to make college more affordable, and not just a 4-year degree, but community colleges and trade schools, so that if they're unemployed, those that have lost their jobs right now due to the recession, they can go back and get the job training that they need to compete in the 21st century for jobs going forward.
All right, Congressman Dent, what would you do, what would you say to that person who's unemployed about why you could make a difference and offer some hope?
Well, first, just to respond to my opponent, John Callahan, I am the candidate in this race who was endorsed by the United States Chamber of Commerce and by the National Federation of Independent Business because of my strong record on supporting pro-growth, pro-job policies. You talked about the new normal with the New York Times article. Clearly, to me, this recession is not, the policies that have been enacted since the recession began by this administration and by the Pelosi Congress have not been suitable. The stimulus plan, it borrowed too much, spent too much, delivered too few jobs. Let's face it, it was really not so much about jobs. It was about a bailout to state governments. It really has not been effective. Just yesterday, I announced about how stimulus dollars are being misused, where our federal stimulus dollars are being sent to a terminal, a cement importation terminal in Staten Island, New York, for the express purpose of bringing in cement from Peru, manufactured in Peru. It'll undermine many jobs right here in the Lehigh Valley, which supports the New York market. My opponent supported that stimulus plan, which has failed. Unemployment has been over 9.5% for, I think, about 14 months now. I mean, that is just simply not acceptable. We can do better. We need to have a plan that will actually incent private sector investment. I say give a 20% deduction on income to every small business in America. Those small businesses will spend money much more effectively and efficiently than Washington will. This government-driven stimulus has proved to be a failure, and my opponent has endorsed it.
All right. Well, I'm sure we're going to bat some of the particulars around in just a second, but Jake Towne, let me get you in here, the independent candidate in the 15th District. You're talking to somebody, perhaps on the street, who has lost a job. Perhaps they've heard what the other two are saying about what they might do regarding jobs. What would you tell that person?
Well, absolutely, Rob. And the whole problem is that, you know, where I take a very different stance than both Mr. Dent and Mr. Callahan, is that governments don't create jobs. They do not create sustainable jobs. Only people do. And the whole thing is that to cure your unemployment, what Congress has to do, you really just have to look at one thing. They must stop from interfering with the regulatory laws, labor laws, and tax laws. All you need to do is ask yourself one question when you go through these laws and just say, you know, does this encourage or discourage employment? And if it discourages employment, you need to remove it. And that's what Congress, both the Republicans and the Democrats, have completely failed to do. Second of all, we need a lot less government federal spending and a lot more spending and savings by individuals. And what I support is a temporary federal income tax holiday to stimulate the economy, because the whole thing is again, the whole problems that we have, the problems of excessive federal spending are not going to be cured by more excessive federal spending. And the whole thing is that the typical schemes that you'll hear these career politicians bat around, they usually result to one or two things. Either they want to just print up money and hand it out to people, or they want to resort to federal jobs programs such as the stimulus plan, which just never work. And the reason they don't work is you cannot centrally plan an economy with planners in Washington, D.C. It's very prone to corruption. It just won't work.
Let's talk about the stimulus. Congressman Dent says that the stimulus didn't work. You said it wasn't maybe good enough. What do you think?
What I will say is we have to remember again why the stimulus was necessary. You know, what I would say to that individual who's out of a job is one thing we shouldn't do is send the same people back to Congress that got us here in the first place. So the bottom line with the stimulus bill is that it was necessary to avert a recession from becoming a depression. Okay?
Hold on right there. Was the stimulus necessary, Mr. Dent?
Well, we needed to do something to incent job creation. This was the wrong plan. The plan that John Callahan supports, those who supported it said, you know, unemployment would not go over 8%. Dr. Christina Romer, the president's chief economic advisor, former economic advisor now, said it wouldn't go over 8%. But they were wrong in all their projections. They assumed that the federal government would drive us out of this recession. They were wrong. And then they doubled down. You know, you talked about the new norm with this health care law that my opponent, John Callahan, has endorsed. You're talking about a $2.6 trillion new program. We should be very clear about one other point with this law. I mean, you have employer mandates. The law is set up in such a way that you're going to see employers shrink payrolls in order to meet the mandate. I mean, so they're going to incentivize unemployment. It's simply wrong.
I want to come back to the details of the health care law in just a bit. But you were making the point.
If I can say that again, like the government intervention is not the answer. What Mr. Callahan backs is the current stimulus plan, which didn't work. What Mr. Dent supported was the Republican version of the stimulus plan, which was about $600 billion. That's the whole problem. Government intervention doesn't work. It's going to be individuals that get us out of this depression, not the government.
So there was no need for any of the federal spending under the rubric of stimulus in your estimation?
Absolutely not.
All right.
Let's talk a bit about the $850 billion Wall Street bailout that Charlie Dent supported. No strings attached.
You did too.
I did not. You're wrong, Charlie. You're not telling the truth.
You took three different positions.
Simply not telling
You took three positions. Your campaign manager, Justin Shaw.
He doesn't speak for me.
Let's clarify what we're talking about. We've switched from the stimulus, which is federal money pumped into all kinds of parts of the USA, to ostensibly create jobs. And now you're switching to the bailout of the banks.
Right.
We just want to be clear what we're talking about.
Which unfortunately many people do get confused about. But Charlie Dent supported deregulation of Wall Street. Then he turned around and supported an $850 billion bailout of those same Wall Street banks. And then every opportunity that he's had since the bailout, taking millions of our dollars, bailing out the banks, allowing CEOs to collect millions of dollars of bonuses with our taxpayer dollars, every chance he's had to hold those same banks accountable and prevent another bailout, he has said no. So, we've got to remember, Rob, how we got here. The Wall Street meltdown created this recession and the loss of over 8 million jobs.
Congressman
Let's be very clear. He has taken 3 different positions on the Troubled Asset Relief Program. His campaign manager didn't. He just acknowledged his campaign manager doesn't speak for him. It's on the record, PA 2010. Nevertheless, one thing about the Troubled Asset Relief Program that we need to talk about is that Sarah Palin, John McCain, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, who's coming in for you next week, myself, and George Bush, we all agreed that we needed to do this. And we all agreed that we needed to do this to stabilize the financial services infrastructure of the country. My opponent had no plan. In fact, as I said, he took 3 different positions on this. Now, we had an obligation to stabilize the situation. That money is being repaid, and we are collecting that money in short order. And when it comes to Wall Street, it is my opponent who interfered in a bond issue in the city of Bethlehem, costing over $1 million to the ratepayers because of his intervention on behalf of the Wall Street firm Merrill Lynch. Somebody might want to ask why he did that. Ron Donchez, your authority chair.
Let's talk about what they did with let's have you come back in just a second, Jake. That's a particular charge about the bond issue. If you want to come back at that real quick.
Simply say it's not true, and that we had an opportunity to increase the savings as a result. We actually saved taxpayer dollars because of the refinancing of that bond issue.
Sure.
The Merrill Lynch, right? We'll talk about Merrill Lynch. I'm glad Charlie brought up Merrill Lynch. They accepted billions of dollars of Wall Street TARP money in late October of 2008. And then a month and a half later, they doled out more than $3.4 billion of those same TARP dollars to CEOs and executives at Merrill Lynch. That is simply wrong. No one's going to tell me that we need to do that so they can give the TARP law, the TARP executives billions of dollars.
The CEO pay situation had a lot of people upset.
Well, the TARP law, first he's made a number of incorrect statements. He's entitled to his opinions, but not his own facts. First, in the TARP law, to the TARP, do I get to speak, Rob? The TARP law that we're referring to, basically, it said, it gave the Secretary of Treasury the authority to regulate compensation, executive compensation, as well as severance packages for those institutions that were in the TARP. It's in the law. The failure has been on Secretary Tim Geithner, who has not done his job, who has not done what he had to do. Frankly, it's a difficult job. But that's where the failure was. So on the one hand, you say regulate CEO pay for TARP institutions. It was in the law that you now say you oppose, even though previously you said you had supported. And by the way, the chairman of your water authority, Ron Donchez, went to city council and complained about your intervention, and he said it would cost the city over $1 million because of what you had done.
We're not going to necessarily get to the bottom of the Bethlehem local issue.
Twice had an opportunity to curb those CEO bonuses, and every time he said no. Right. So it's easy to put it on Secretary Geithner, but at some point, no, it's your job, Charlie. You are a member of Congress. You had an opportunity to vote to change it.
How much should we pay a bank teller?
Do it.
How much would you tell me? How much should we pay a bank teller? At some point, you have got to.
Jake Towne,
own your record, Charlie.
How much would you like to pay a bank teller?
The facts is, during the past 6 years, our country has gone into a depression. Mr. Dent was the congressman of our area in charge. He did not put forward any type of bill or any type of resolution to help us move it out. And my stance on the bailouts is very clear. Mr. Dent voted for the banker bailouts. Mr. Callahan maybe he's reversing his position, but he has on PA2010.com, you can go and look and see that he did actually support the bailouts. I am the only candidate in this race that opposes taxpayer-paid bailouts of private corporations. And what we need to also remember is that if the financial sector had crashed, what we would have had was a very brief and sharp recession in the financial sector, but we wouldn't have had all this spillover into the general economy, and all the joblessness that we're facing right now is really caused by that.
All right. The TARP program, well, I'm sure we'll come back to that. I want to talk also about tax cuts. I'm not sure we actually finished on stimulus, but we'll come back to that perhaps as well. The tax cut issue is something that the House was apparently going to try to deal with this time around, but has left Washington without dealing with it all. And that is, should there be an extension of the Bush-era tax cuts for everybody in America, no matter what they make, or just for folks who make less than $200,000? A couple of things on that to set this up. You have analysts who say, such as people from Deutsche Bank, that the recovery would be halted if Congress doesn't continue the